Warning, the material you're about to be exposed to is foreign. The mind state it is limited in your capacity to understand the actual reality of power around them, just as you and everyone else alive currently are. What you're about to hear are opinions, suppositions, like gospel or scientific proofs, not infallible certainties. Brace yourself for incoming opinions that could confirm or deny your preferential view of the reality of power. Gracious for fallible material, fallible opinions, and values reflected, but nonetheless very firmly held. We do not apologize to anyone bad. We do not apologize for daring to express our views and impressions of what we know and what we hope to see. We will keep talking so long as we are able.
And now, Frico attempts to talk about the news without freaking out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, do Frico talks the news. I'm Frico. I talk the news. So I thought, I'm Frico and I talk the news. So what do you call the show? Frico talks the news. Boom! Genius, pure, unadulterated genius. I want to talk a little bit there about how we got here to Frico Talks the News. Frico Talks the News comes to you from Frico.com, where I assemble the best of the best, subjectively speaking, stories that I feel like I want to talk about, or I want to show. And most of the stories don't make it onto the show, but you could still get access to the links of stories that didn't quite make it, but are still worth talking about. Just didn't quite make it. But these stories come from a family of news aggregate sites that I, Frico, run. Newsalike.com, the glitz, the odd, the under the radar, the hard to believe news at a glance. Obamacare.tv, free market social engineering for the masses. And finally, pioneeringnews.com, tech, science, underground news links. I take the best of the best of the links there, and I send them on over to Frico.com. And after I'm done, I assemble them for the 5 stories that I'm going to turn into news art today. And our news art for today is titled, Squid Skilling the Cost of Micromanaging Artificial Scarcity, for Thursday, May 28th, 2020. And without further ado, let's I tell you what. I already did that. That's what happens when you press the wrong button, ladies and gentlemen. I actually need another scene placed. Well, you guys don't have to worry about what I need, but just a little bit behind the scenes action there. Definitely going to need to create another scene for what I'd like to do here, because this is actually the top headline segment that I'm in right now, but I'll fix that for tomorrow's show. So, without further ado, though, let's get ready to record our headlines for today. Let's adjust this just right. Ready? In 3, 2, 1. This is the talk headlines for Frico Talks the News on Thursday, May 28th, 2020. Our top headline for today, Greece threatened by Turks with second wave of refugees. This is definitely using human shields as a geopolitical weapon, most assuredly. Quite common in the nation-state-averse. Here's an excerpt from GreekCityTimes.com. Turkey announces it will start another migrant crisis with Greece after coronavirus. Ankara is again openly threatening to try and attempt to asymmetrically invade Greece with illegal immigrants. I hate that phrase. I just hate calling human beings illegal. I just don't ever really. Even when I was firmly in the conservative camp, back in the day, I was never fully comfortable with that phrase. I did use it for a period, but I just don't like using that phrase. Anybody that uses that phrase immediately, I'm not going to say I'm going to condemn people for using that phrase. Not at all. But it's certainly, okay, I'm going to take note. Okay, take note. That doesn't necessarily mean a legal immigrant leads to bad discoveries about the individual that uses that phrase, and not even more often than not. More often than not, it doesn't. It's just, it's enough of a little, they call them dog whistles, and I think this is a legitimate dog whistle, but I also believe that most of the time people that use quote-unquote dog whistles are not using them as dog whistles, so it's about a balanced response, a proportional response to what you're seeing, but that phrase, illegal immigrant, I don't particularly like it, and I definitely think it helps to create heuristic institutions within, which tend to subhumanize human beings just for being in the wrong preferred groupings. In an interview with Dim TV in Turkey, Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu referred to the migrant issue and argued that the migrant issue, that's Interesting phraseology, too. Well, it's like this article, actually, it went from far right kind of dog whistling to kind of far left dog whistling. Well, it's the migrant issue. These people aren't migrants. They're political footballs, but they're not migrants. They're victims, but they're not migrants. They're human beings that are being ground to dust because they happen to be in a bad circumstance. They happen to be caught between the teeth of competing warlords, but they're not migrants. They're suicide bombers, and except they're not volunteer suicide bombers. They don't know they're suicide bombers. They've been told that there's hope. They're innocent human beings who are being kind of used as metaphorical suicide bombers. They're going to be injected into lands where their intentions are not their own. The intentions are for them to disrupt, dismantle, cause chaos, disorder. And if that chaos and disorder turns into a targeted hatred which produces actions, these same quote-unquote migrants are going to be killed. So that's the suicide part. The bomber part is they come in, they disrupt. The suicide part is they end up being the target of of the ire, and they shouldn't be. The folks coming in shouldn't be the target of the ire. The target of the ire should be the folks that continue to position realities of power in such a way that we find ourselves in this circumstance in the first place. It's not the quote-unquote migrants. It's not the human beings. They're not illegals. They're not migrants. They're human beings who, by the grace of God, every single one of us, most assuredly, in all likelihood, would make many of the same decisions these folks make. We'd be right there, even if you knew that you were a Turkish weapon. Even if you knew that this was basically a suicide run, you'd also know the lottery mentality, which is, I'm pretty sure that some of us are actually going to succeed, are going to escape the suicide part and be really, have what we want, be able to have a living that we want. And they're right. Some people will escape, and that's all you need. All you need is a lottery's chance. All human beings need is a lottery's chance to continue to support a system which grinds the vast majority of us, 90+% of us, down before our time. All you need is that lottery's chance. And every single one of us, well, not every single one of us, of course not. Just about every single one of us would be in whatever circumstance the individuals found themselves that are in the places that might actually find buses arrive at some point taking you to a place that says cross this border, you'll have hope. You do it. I would do it. So these human beings, I got nothing against any of these human beings. I got nothing against the Greeks, by the way, for rejecting them either. Within the reality of power, such as it is, a nation state's first and foremost responsibility is to its citizens. If you don't like that, then stop using nation-state models. And if you don't want to stop using nation-state models, then shut the heck up. Because this is the reality of power within nation-states. There were refugees in the camps who went to the border with Greece due to the pandemic. This stopped. I'm not saying this is a threat, but after the pandemic, the refugees will definitely want to leave and go there. Why? Why do they want to go there? Why there? Of all places, why there? Why would the refugees need to go to Greece? Why can't you get them in boats and ship them to the countries that say, yeah, we want them? Because it ain't Greece. Greece has no responsibility but to its own citizens. Nation states got no responsibility to their own citizens. The degree to which they should care about the people outside their borders is the degree to which it serves the interest of the people inside their borders. And I would say Greece doesn't have a significant nation state vested interest to take into its fold hundreds of thousands of human beings, many of which have no intentions whatsoever to throw in and become Greek. They have no intentions whatsoever. So why would any nation state want that? No nation state would want that. And I'm not blaming the individuals for wanting what individuals want. I'm blaming as always, whatever nation state, whatever people are within any nation state, the target of your ire should always be against the people within your lands who invariably are the ones that enabled the quote-unquote enemies from without to have access to sacred power from within. And that's most nation states, for various reasons, their top leadership, their top citadelians are essentially not really citadelians. They're just vassals of larger entities within global scales. So, to continue on this, we have sent the following message that on the occasion of the pandemic, if you say that we do not need Turkey, then you should know that the pandemic will end, but the refugee issue will continue for many years. Then please don't knock on our door. Our goal is good cooperation, of course, a cooperation that everyone will keep their promises. In other words, if you don't do what we tell you to do, we're going to unleash refugee fury. These people, by the way, to call them refugees would definitely be an accurate term. They are refugees. Most assuredly, they are refugees. And all of us have a contribution to their refugee status. All of us, wittingly or unwittingly. If you live in the United States of America and you buy at Walmart, just that alone means part of what you have done is kind of, well, it does. It has a direct monetary support on the ability of a nation state such as the United States of America to make the decisions that it made to help create those refugees for reasons that had nothing to do with humanitarianism or freedom or liberty. It had everything to do with citadelians in competition with one another, using the lethal powers of states to do their bidding. That's all it is. That's all that's going on here. America has no moral high ground here. And if you want to hold people morally accountable, I think maybe half or more of the world has some contributions to make to the refugees, because half or more of the world has in various levels been in support of the systems and profited from those systems that enabled and necessitated what actually happened in Syria. And that's what this is about. This is about the refugees from Syria. Now, many of the people in these camps are not actually refugees from Syria. They have been literally shipped in from other parts of the world to build up an army of refugees. Now, some of those people that have been shipped in, they're not even refugees. They are just basically they're militia. they're militias that have been brought in. Mercenaries that have been brought in. Now, unfortunately for the Syrian refugees, the Turks chose to intermingle them with militias. And of course, it's not being reported much, but what's going on in those camps is they have basically created the same type of authoritarian structures that made them refugees in the first place, in large part thanks to the mercenary militia types that have been imported by Turkey and other world powers that have. This is why you have, in many instances, the Russian militias fighting Russian militias, American militias fighting American militias. Sometimes the Russians and Americans are fighting the Turkish militias, or it's insane. It's insane, the level of where allies are fighting each other in one field and fighting with each other in another field, and enemies the same thing. They're fighting each other. They're fighting each other in one area and fighting with each other in other areas. So it shows so much about how all of these battles have nothing whatsoever to do with any kind of ideas. This is not a reflection of humanity struggling to understand itself and working this out through friction. This is merely the continued reflection of competing systems that rely on the charisma and the sanguinity of killers to continue to direct its fundamental decisions. That's all this is. And I think we're going to leave this here. I think that's a good timing. This is about what I want these segments to be. Nailed it! This has been the headline segment for today. Coming up next is going to be the Dialectical. And the Dialectical for today is titled, you know the one thing I didn't do, though? The one thing that I didn't do was switch scenes. Okay, so I nailed everything else, but on that segment, didn't switch the scenes. But I am going to switch scenes on the next segment, I swear. So this segment coming up is going to be Frontline IP Wars, the VPN empowerment versus the IP controls. And you're going to have to keep watching if you're on the YouTube channel or watching on BitChute. Well, I don't know what videos will end up on BitChute or not. That's my major... I'm seriously wanting to invest more in figuring out how to make BitChute work in my life. But when I have days in which it's a crapshoot, as far as which videos will actually end up showing up on BitChute. I don't know, BitChute. You got to fix that problem, or I can't continue to try to invest time in figuring you out. I got to find... Anybody got any suggestion of alternative video platforms to post on? Comment down below if that's true. And with that, I'm going to end this segment. Wait, there you go. This is the last scene that you should have seen. See, all these 3 scenes you should have seen, but in a certain flow that I didn't have. But anyway, so I still did. I changed all 3 scenes in this segment. Nailed it. And I didn't freak out. I didn't freak out, ladies and gentlemen. I'm 14 days in with no freak out. God bless me. 14 shows. Oh, darn it. Darn it, darn it, darn it. Man, because so many things about that segment I'm very happy about. The internal conversations in my head as I'm performing it. I'm not necessarily saying I was delivering like killer wit and wisdom, but in terms of keeping myself mostly on point, keeping my digressions to a limitation, I felt like it pretty good. I hope my wife enjoys that segment because I had her little voice in my head. She's helped me a lot in producing the show. I've got this show and tomorrow's show ahead of me before I get to the biggest show, the greatest show that podcasting universe will ever see. Well, no, not ever see. We'll see ever have seen up to that point, because I'm only going to get better, of course. But not that it will be recognized. It still will only get like 2 or 3 live views, but it doesn't matter. I'm like Van Gogh right now. I'm slinging out masterpieces, and I just don't want to end up with I don't want to die before the glory comes in, and it's coming, folks. So follow me now. Get on board now, so you could be the ultimate hipster. Although don't be the ultimate hipster, because then you'll stop listening when everybody starts listening. Don't do that. Be the hipster of hipsters. You out hipster the hipster. You keep watching even after your thing breaks it into the big time. Then you'll be the ultimate hipster. I'm saying it now. I'm putting the challenge before you. So let's see how I do in this next segment. I'm going to try to keep Jenna's voice in my head. That's the name of my wife, Jenny, Jena. Lovely name. My wife is the greatest human being on the face of the planet, by the way. So I'm speaking to you, my love. I'm doing this next segment just for you. Just for you. Unless it sucks, in which case I dedicate this to Donald Trump and Joe Biden. We'll see how it goes. If it's my wife's segment or their segment. See how I turned off the microphone before I did the snotties? I'm a decent human being. And a little bit of a ear itch going on. Got my coffee, so no Hello Kitty today, sorry. No Hello Kitty cup, just the coffee. We're going to sip now. Everybody join us with the sip. I'm going to turn this off. I've always said this on multiple occasions. My sippage is strong. I challenge anyone, if you ever want to have a sippage contest to pull off my massive sippage skillage, you let me know. Comment down below if you would like to engage in a sippage with me. And if you say yes, I'll then let you know how we do it. I'm going to have to ask you a few questions to figure out how to define the rules in a way that I win. So that's only fair. All right, let's get ready for the next segment in 3, 2, 1. This is the Dialectical for Frico Talks the News on Thursday, May 28th, 2020. Our Dialectical today, Frontline IP Wars, the VPN empowerment versus the IP controls. At the edge of the struggle to exploit need lies two enterprising entities: the VPN providers and the IP controllers. The folks that derive their means of production from enabling humans to exchange value with something sort of in the neighborhood of anonymity. So we're just going to highlight that so you keep those folks in mind. Versus the folks that derive their means of production from collecting fees for the least bit superfluous use of digital representations of previously digitally constructed works, such as music and films and whatnots. So now we're going to highlight these folks. See those? Oops. I'm going to get all that in there. It's them folks versus them folks. So we've got the value exchangers versus the digital use revenuers. How about that? The digital use revenuers. But it's more interesting than that, because intermingled in that battle lies the interest of another enterprising entity, the coercive enterprise of the land, any land, be it the Chinese one or the American, whose interest in controlling the exchange of value in any sense, well, to be very euphemistic, is significantly profound. I should highlight that alone. Significantly profound. And all the more given the nature of the competition that nation states find themselves facing. The state and the publishers on one side, to use more friendly terms but far less accurate ones, technically it's accurate to call them publishers, it's accurate to call them the state, but it's hardly defines really, if you really wanted to get to the visceral, blood and bone reality of what these entities actually comprise in terms of how they affect the potential for human exchange. The labels would be, subjectively speaking, I'll say, far less flattering and neutral than state and publisher. And the VPN providers on the other side may come to symbolize in some form the leading edge of the struggles between competing preferences when the technological reality of power is increasingly favoring individuals in small, consensual associations. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about a circumstance where the technological reality of power, and if you're watching my show, and you should be watching it every single freaking day, Monday through Friday, at least for the next two shows, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I have a feeling, and so far I'm thinking, the evidence seems to strongly suggest that my tiny uptick in views is indicative of a massive successful campaign in transitioning to a new time, and other also just in terms of how it fits in my life, it's been pretty awesome. So you keep watching 8 a.m. and you keep finding all the examples that I can show you over and over of how technology is increasingly working on the side of individuals and consensual associations. The ability of individuals to muster the force and market power force first and foremost. Even the force power is necessary for the market power, but the market power is the soft application of force. They call it soft power. Screw that, because power in and of itself does not apply what they're doing. That's a very specific type of power. It's force power. It's soft force power. That should be defined, because it is the power of these corpo states to operate with impunity against American citizens in violation of their basic bills of rights. It's the power of them to not face the consequences of their actions because they're protected by state guns. It's that power. It's a soft force power, because they wouldn't be able to do what they do if government guns didn't protect them. No, I can almost guarantee you're talking about a land of 300 plus million people, in which these platforms, for instance our social media platforms, have definitively thrown in with a very small segment of society with a very narrow view of what is right and proper in human exchange. Very, very narrow, very, very specific worldview that they have sought to superimpose upon all of Americans, all 320 million plus of us, when it is a discipline. I'll call it a discipline. Let's just call it a discipline. A discipline that is, I would wager, most likely authentically followed and believed by maybe 30 million, maybe 60 million, maybe as many as 20% of America. And most of these 20% are well-to-do folks. This is an upper middle-class movement largely. And it is largely being fed and enforced by citadelian billionaires. So in that circumstance, when we find ourselves in a situation in which maybe as much as, let's just be conservative. Let's just say you've only significantly impacted and alienated half of the country from the major means of communications in America. If you have done that, 500,000 human beings, 160 million people, if you've managed to alienate and isolate and disenfranchise 160 million human beings, how many people have the capacity to commit violence, or the predilection to commit violence? Maybe 10%, let's just say. But let's just be generous and just say 1%. 1% of that audience is potentially willing to express its dissatisfaction with you through a violent expression. That means that what you have created is 1.6 million human beings who may suddenly have a desire to do physical harm to your ability to continue to diminish their lives, to disenfranchise them. Now, when those 1.6 million people have a belief of rightly in this land that the government will step in and protect those entities, which you may very well come to view as military assets for interests that are not aligned with American ones. I view them in that way myself, although I'm not in this 1%. And this is a warning. Well, in a way, this is somewhat of a warning to you folks, but not necessarily, because really, the fact is that 1%, among that 1%, you're probably only talking amongst them maybe 1 in 100 who would act out if they could, if they didn't fear the government being involved. So as of right now, you could possibly imagine there's roughly 100,000 odd human beings that, if they had the capacity, they may very well do violent things to entities that they feel have fundamentally disenfranchised them. That's how you end up with terrorism, one of the ways. You're literally potentially creating terrorists. Now, of that 100,000, how many people are really capable of doing anything? Maybe 1 in 100 of them. So maybe you're really talking about maybe 1,000 human beings that you really have to worry about in America that could do you harm. And that's largely because the state protects you. You remove that implied protection, and the state comes out and says, a real simple thing, and I support this decision. This is what I would like the state to do. To step up and say, anyone who has a significant market share, who violates the bills of rights of individuals, will not receive any protection from the government. Simple. I mean, there's probably all kinds of problems with that. I'm not seriously proposing that. It's a mental exercise I throw out there. You guys think about that. Give me some feedback. Tell me how crazy it is. But just as I'll say abstractly, ideationally, without doing the maths and the nuts and bolts of just what the consequences of such a law would be. I love the concept in general, the abstract concept of states removing protection from corporations that violate the bills of rights of individuals. You don't have to make it illegal for corporations to violate the bills of rights of individuals if you really don't want to go down that road. All you got to do is, if you're not going to do that, though, if you're not going to compel them with guns to respect the bills of rights of Americans, no matter who they are, if it's a foreign company that's doing business in America, your company better not violate the bills of rights of Americans, whatever it is. And if you're not willing to do that, then the other thing that you must do, then the other side is, don't protect them. Let them face the consequence. If you really want to see a free market, then stop protecting the ones that are not treating it like a free market. Just let the market decide, and don't protect them. When people show up with guns at Twitter HQ, don't protect them. And see, what'll happen is they'll never get to that point. Because Twitter HQ will know in advance, if I do this, if I decide to throw full in with this tiny segment of the world and insist that I will use my powerful world message transmitting powerful signal platform to protect a small faction and disenfranchise at least half of Americans in a fundamentally existential way at this point, then I better think about whether I want to face the consequences of that decision, because people will be ticked. Maybe the reality of power is such that my cost of coercing these people is too high. And then it never comes to that. It won't. Twitter would not do half the stuff it's done if you remove the protection of the state. The American state protects its lands, its territories. The American state protects Facebook's lands and Facebook's territories, Washington Post lands and Washington Post territories. All these territories protected by the American state. And yet all of these major entities with all of the world and national powers that they have chosen to throw in with alienating and disenfranchising half of the country or more. I mean, that's a recipe for civil war is what that is. And I'm not advocating for any of this. I'm not advocating for this is primarily a warning. The warning is that really it's to two sides. The one side's warning Saudis than they are with the Bill of Rights. I'll just put it to the Bill of Rights. It's just the Bill of Rights. Their alignment is so far away from the Bill of Rights that they're anti-American at this point. And more people are figuring this out about these companies. And they know this. And I know the frustration, but I am telling you that if you rise up and you use guns and you use violence to try to end this tyranny, all you will be doing is doing the same thing that everyone has done before you. You're just going to recreate the necessity for killers to do your bidding. Because it will be the people who have the least compunction for killing that will rise to the top in any type of revenge ideology. And yes, it is a revenge ideology to to transfer your frustrations and angers with Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, the same ones I have, Washington Post, CNN, all these entities that have thrown in with this very weird anti-American SJW authoritarianism, that you will simply be replacing one authoritarian system with another. And more than likely, what you end up with, at least for a period of time, a short period of time at the very least, if not a much longer period of time, what you will end up with is some homicidal maniac in charge that's way worse than whatever SJW authoritarians might have done. So there's your warning. And on the other side, the warning is, you people can't keep doing this and expect things to just keep going along without people doing violent things. Violence is coming. You're not going to escape this. And God help us when it does. It's not going to help. It's not even going to help the ones that are perpetrating the violence. But it's difficult for anyone to control that. Right now, you have about 1,000 human beings probably in this land. That's my wager. 1,000 human beings in this land who probably have both the capability and the will to do violent things, targeted violent things. And that is only going to potentially increase. And if you're listening to me, and you're one of those potential 1,000 people, I will tell you, don't put your time and effort into trying to strategize how you can do whatever horrible thing you think will bring about whatever you think it's going to bring about that's better than now. Use that energy and that intellectual capacity that you may have, that know-how that you have, to build right where you are at. Start investing in mesh networks and 3D printers and microgrids and neighborhood microgrids, neighborhood microfactories. So many things that we could be doing right here and right now that would absolutely devastate Twitter without ever having to fire a shot. The minute that anyone fires shots in any kind of coordinated way, we are lost for probably another 100 years. That's my prediction. We have this moment, this opportunity to at the very least pause the cycle of violence. So this whole passage here, if you take anything from this, what I hope you primarily take is this. It is the tech and our ability to treat one another consensually for whatever reason you get to that point. The more people you can gather around your life that are doing the same, and you doing the same with one, be consensual. And in that consensuality, build right here and right now the capacity to say no. When the corpo state says, we'll cut you off, you say, from what? We're fine. We do most of our business over here in a place that you can't control. Places, rather, that you can't control. See, we have all the power that we need to do that. They can keep their stuff. They can keep their mansions. They can keep their jets. They can keep their lives. We don't need to bother them at all. Now, their ability to continue to take in revenue is going to become increasingly more difficult, and their ability to try to protect themselves using violence is going to become increasingly difficult. And eventually, they won't be able to afford all those things, and maybe they'll default, or some of them be able to hold on to their mansions and nothing else. Who knows? They'll dwindle away peacefully, without a shot being fired. That is the world that Frico offers you, a non-violent end to the cycle of violence, which comes through the doing, through the capacity of individuals to do among themselves outside of the systems that the Citadelians control. That's kind of mad crazy thing you hear from bums. They're like, why are you homeless? Well, I'm just trying to escape the Citadelians and keep off of the systems of control that they control. Yeah, but I know it sounds crazy, and again, I only use the word Citadelian as it's just a convenient placeholder. I think it's a good phrase to describe ultimately what these humans are. They are walking citadels. They are fortresses in and of themselves, metaphorically and otherwise. They literally are surrounded by armed guards, and they're surrounded by laws and regulations, and they're surrounded by judges and politicians, and they're surrounded by police and military and generals. They are surrounded by not an invincible wall, but for all practical purposes, for most human beings, an invincible wall. They are a citadel. When George Soros walks around the world, he is a citadel. Donald Trump is a citadel. I'm not going to go through all the list of the citadels that are on this planet, but it's not a lot actually. But it's probably not more than 1,000 total human beings on this planet. Now, there's a lot of folks, high-level vassals, that may seem like citadelians at times, but when the push comes to shove and the rubber hits the road, the ultimate power that these vassals actually have is whichever citadelian they're serving. So long as they satisfy the citadelian, to everybody else they may be kind of a citadelian, but ultimately they don't derive their power from them. They derive their power from a citadelian. So I think I didn't even get to read the excerpt for this. That is, and that's okay. This is, for this one, by the way, I knew I was going to take a longer time for this one. For the Dialectical, I always take longer for the Dialectical, so I'm still well within what I want to do for this segment. So, in essence, I don't even know what we need to describe from this excerpt itself, but you can go check it out yourself. It doesn't really matter, honestly. The excerpt itself is an opinion piece, and it's basically using a VPN to skirt geo-restrictions, implications for intellectual property from the American Enterprise Institute. You know what I feel about intellectual property. If you haven't noticed, you'll notice here. Let me see if I can. There it is. Content free to use so long as Freako and Freako.com are identified as the creators. So if you have a site that has way more people than me and you could monetize this video and make a gazillion dollars off of it, go ahead. I don't care. Yeah, I live by the IP, die by the IP kind of guy. I respect the reality of power, so I respect IP. But not because I respect IP, but because I respect guns. I understand that ultimately guns come into the equation, and way more guns than I could possibly ever possess. So I adhere to the IP laws. But I myself would never use, well, I won't say I would never use IP laws against someone, because if you took my stuff and you took credit for it, I think I would use the reality of power system to try to go after you. Maybe, possibly, I don't know. It would depend. Probably not even then, but who knows? Probably not. I'm going to end it here. You can check this out for yourself. You go to Freako.com. You go today. It's on that front page. It'll be there till tomorrow. Trust me, I already got content queued up and ready to replace it. So it'll only be there for today, May 28th, and you can find the link and check it out for yourself. I think I've said what I need to say regarding the nature of the battle, the VPNers versus the mind colonizers. That's what I'll call these publishers. Mind colonizers. And that also really describes the state, because that's what they want to do. They want to colonize minds as well. They want to assure that the minds, the state wants to assure that the minds reflect the humans that will do their bidding, while the corporations just basically want to profit off of the minds of others. And that's where I'll leave it. This is the end of the Dialectical. Coming up next is where is it here? There it is. All right, the Talk Focus. There it is. One day calling our roads morons won't seem so ridiculous. Yeah, I think in general, the way that I will want to have this show structured. Now, this is a big test, because the focus, this shouldn't be more than 15 minutes long. If I do this right, the Top Focus will not be more than 15 minutes long. The Dialectical, that will probably be on average between 20 and 30 minutes. Sometimes it'll be short. It will be short sometimes. Like tomorrow's Dialectical, probably going to be about 30 minutes. It'll be longer than this one. So the Dialecticals, that's the one part that I'm happy with it being longer. But all the rest, y'all, hold me accountable. Do it. Hold me accountable. All the rest of these segments, I generally want to try to get 15 minutes or less. That's my targeted goal. 20 to 30 minutes for the Dialectical, 15 minutes or less for all the rest. And with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, cross your fingers and dot your I's and T's and crossed and all that, and do everything you can to wish me goodwill as I get prepared to try to create an excellent segment for you, the people. A segment that I hope I contain to 15 minutes or less. Let's see if he hits all of his marks, or does he fail right out the gate. And we're going to start recording in 3, 2, 1. This is the Talk Focus for Frico Talks the News on Thursday, May 28th, 2020. My name is Frico with Frico.com, and this focus is one day our roads, morons, won't seem so... Oh, I missed a word. That's why. What the heck? I'm using the word moron while portraying myself as a moron. One day, calling our roads morons won't seem ridiculous. Now, at first, when I was looking for an image for this, I was thinking of my roads, but it didn't quite fit. That's a shout out to my ANCAP friends. I'm not an ANCAPper myself, but I got a lot of ANCAP friends. Shout out to my ANCAP friends. My road! That is the common argument that folks that favor the state make to my ANCAPers is, well, without the state, who will take care of the roads? It is a legitimate question, though, but still. It's an annoying one because it's almost religious how people cling to my roads. So there you go. That's the inside of why a title is what it was. Well, actually, a title was what it turned out not to be, because it was going to be my roads, and then I changed it. One day, calling our roads morons won't seem so ridiculous. That's right. Not only did I break my own cardinal rule of never starting off an article or a post with the same words and the same sweet sequence as the title. Don't use your title as your opening sentence, you putz. But I also appealed to your sense of the sublimely absurd in this opening sentence. And comment. I said comment. It's a comment, too. What we have here, folks, is a situation in which one day we will be driving from one familiar place to some unfamiliar place. And we will be asking ourselves this question. I wonder how smart these roads are, because they look a little bit dodgy. Look, they don't even have all the ice cleared on the edges, dumbasses. And we'll think of our undynamic, unthinking, tar-brained roads as metaphorical Quasimodos. Sans the bells, because that's not an option anymore, dude. Too soon. Too soon. This is an excerpt from Tech Explorist. You love that? I particularly like the image that I chose there. Just a dumb road. Just a dumb road. It just lies there. It lies there. Never mind. Oh my gosh. I had a joke in my head, which I think is funny, but if I said it, y'all would think it was indecent, so I didn't say it. Pretend that I made a funny joke there about how some people lie there like somebody from a certain denominational religious female operation that is suddenly finding itself in a I'm no longer a virgin. Never mind. It's too soon. The Catholics deserve better. Bruh. Intelligent concrete could enable highways and bridges to repair themselves. With an idea to make infrastructure adaptive, sustainable, and resilient, scientists at Purdue University are developing a technology called intelligent concrete that would allow concrete to heal itself. Oh, man, I wish I was made of that concrete. That would be awesome. Scientists are searching for various highly porous sand-like materials called internal curing agents. Internal curing agents to mix into the concrete. At the point when concrete cracks, the curing agents ingest water and feed it into chemical reactions. These reactions produce vital substances that seal off the crack. Vital substances. I want to know about the vital substances. A lot of things I want to know, but that's okay. I don't need to know everything about this. Just the idea of it is enough for me. The healing procedure additionally keeps water from seeping the concrete and corroding steel or rebar reinforcement. Luna Liu, an associate professor at Purdue's Lyell School of Civil Engineering, said, "By using these self-healing materials, we can make infrastructure adaptive to temperature change. We are also thinking ahead on how intelligent infrastructure could both influence and adapt to human behavior." So there you have it. You have... what did I click on? I clicked on Purdue University. There you go. There's Purdue University, and there it is. There it is. Invention. Let's click on you. All right, come on. So, where are we at? Traffic. Okay, we are also thinking ahead on how intelligent infrastructure could both influence and adapt to human behavior. I bet you are. See, this kind of thing makes me nervous. It's like, in general, people thinking ahead on these kind. I mean, I do this, but when it's coming from people that have positions of authority within a system such as we have it today, it makes me nervous, because the next thing I feel you're going to hear about the new Trust and Safety Committee on Human Action. We will assure that all human action is trusted and safe. That's and we figured it out. Intelligent infrastructures that could influence. You know, I don't necessarily trust in how you think that infrastructure should influence us. Just saying. I mean, I don't know anything about you, Lulu, but you're in a system which suggests that if you had any kind of real influential power, you would have to reflect the values of that very system. And since I know the values of that very system are fundamentally coercive in nature, this part makes me nervous, Lou. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little bit nervous about that, but that's okay. You do you, boo, as long as you don't point government guns at me. Just when you come to this part, when you come to this influence part, if you're looking at studying how it might influence, that's one thing. If you're looking at it on how we think it should influence, that's another thing, Lou. You know, Luna, I don't know who you are. Let's see who Luna Lou is. I don't know anything about you. That is one of these names that I think generally, I'm assuming this is a female human being. And let's just see if I'm right. Let's see, Luna Lou Materials Engineering. That sounds like our human. There, I was right! I think. Let's see, Illinois, Indiana. Yep. She's Purdue. So this is it. So this is Luna. Hello, Luna. Luna. There you go, Luna. Let's see if I can get a better picture of you. No? Oh, okay. I got a little stuff going on here that really doesn't make you see her clearly. I got little effects that I do for reasons. You just don't judge me. Alright, there she is. There you can see what Luna looks like. And you get a little bit of a music there. Where are we at here? We're on the focus here. Alright, there we go. So there you go. There's that story of Luna Lou. Well, it's not the story of Luna Lou. It's the story of the I guess she's the one. Is she leading the project? I'm assuming by using these self-healing materials, we can make infrastructures adaptive to temperature change. Yeah, just Luna, just come on the show. If I eventually build an audience and I have that type of audience that helps me get noticed by individuals that I talk about on the show, I will probably end up with it'll be a pre-recorded. It won't be a live stream show, but it'll be a pre-recorded show that'll be released on like a Sunday conversation. Sunday conversations like Dave Rubin. Oh no, it's not that. I don't know. They all blend together. The Dave Rubins and the Ben Shapiros, all those people, those hype masters. I don't want to be a hype master, but I guess I am to a certain degree. I can't help it, but I try not to be a hype master, but I will be a non-Sunday conversation, a non-hype master version of Sunday conversations. And then Luna can come on and I can talk to her and I can get her feedbacks on this whole, where does she feel, what is her role as far as reflecting her expertise on the universe, and what levels of authority would she appeal to assure that her assumptions about the nature of human action in relation to these emerging technologies, how does she view that type of relationship? I very much like to know these questions. Basically, the one question that I think I want to ask almost every guest on my list, maybe. The first question I like is, okay, now give me. I want a list. I want your prescription list. I want to know who on your list that you would deem worthy of killing right now. Who would you deem worthy of killing? What? And then after that, the next question is, what type of actions would you deem worthy of threatening death with if you continue this action? Those are the two questions I most want to ask people nowadays. All the other stuff is irrelevant. I don't care why. I don't want to know your justifications, your moral constructs, any of that. I just want to know, because if I figure out that your list is too broad, then I realize that I'm dealing with a psychopath, and I get the heck away from you. And that's it. I don't need to try to have any type of discourse. Well, I won't say any type, but more often than not, I'll probably feel I don't need to have any type of meaningful discourse with individuals that I deem to have a psychopathic outlook on life, especially if I end up on their prescription list. And I believe if you listen to this show, if you're a progressive, you've heard plenty of things that I said that ticked you off and put me on your prescription list. But you see, if you're a conservative, you've also heard plenty of things that'll tick you off, that'll put me on your prescription list. So I am on everybody's prescription list. So what a surprise, I'm against prescription lists, because I tend to get on them. So you know, what a surprise. Reality of power. Guy doesn't like prescription lists because he's always on them. So I have a vested interest in this. I'm not going to lie to you. I stand on my preferences. I don't shy away from them. Well, I try not to. I'm sure there are parts of my life that I have scotomas, I know there are some parts of my life that I actually don't want to stand on my preferences. I want to keep myself in a spooky kind of situation in that area for whatever reason. But on the main, I stand on my preferences nakedly, not on any moral justification for my preferences. My justification for my preferences is, well, I don't really have a justification. It is what it is. I am what I am. I have preferences. I have a working theory about what the nature of preference is and how it influences us and degrees to which we may be able to redesign ourselves. I don't believe that we can 100% redesign ourselves, but I think we have that capacity. So on that front, I also believe in a measure of, I guess you could say, capacity to mold my preferences in ways that might more fully align with all of my other preferences, to get all of my preferences pointed in the right direction. But I don't even believe that that's something that you would want to ever achieve. I don't believe that perfect harmony within self leads to anything but death. It leads to stasis. You need friction. You need conflict. So I'm not even interested in having all of my preferences lined up. So even on that front, I have no... my justification is it's my preference. And then the only other justification that I would say is my preferences, I will argue, put me in a position that commands me, for my own personal reason, my own self-serving reasons, to be consensual in nature. My tie fell off. That is inappropriate. I'm going to fix that. You know what? I'll fix that after I get done recording this. For now, I'm going to hold this up to shame me for the fact that my tie fell off during the recording of the segment. So, be that as it may, even Luna, even though I'm humiliating myself here with this dangling tie, Luna, if you see this video by any chance, come on the show, talk to me. I want to hear more about this. The nature of what you're talking about when you said how intelligent infrastructure could both influence and adapt to human behavior. I'm really interested in hearing that part about the word influence. So come on my show. I promise I'll make sure my tie stays on during the whole it'll be a pre-recorded segment that you guys see. So come on my show, Luna. We'll do a Skype interview or something. And with that, I'm going to end this segment This is the focus segment. Coming up next is our feature, our talk feature. And our talk feature is none other than breaking the law costs the EU too much to enforce. GDPR reality takes hold. We're going to talk a little bit about positivism. It's going to be interesting. But that comes after the break. Whew. All right. Let me get the tie back on, folks. And I'm going to do this. I could wait till the break and do it without me on camera, but I feel like I've actually been thinking about doing something for the show where I start off and I'm wearing whatever I'm wearing that day. And then I actually do a Mr. Rogers thing, and I have a little song I sing while I get dressed. And I'm thinking about doing that. So comment down below if that's true. No, it is true. Comment down below if you would like a little Frico's neighborhood kind of thing, kind of vibe where I could, maybe it'll be like a it could be a pre-recorded video. I could pick like 10 outfits that I regularly wear and do a video of each and just kind of mix them up so you don't always see the same outfit every day. Kind of mix it up. Maybe I could do something like that. Because it would be better if it was just like a pre-recorded thing that I hit. So let me know if you'd like that. I think it would be a cool little visual. Good way maybe to begin the show instead of what I do now, although what I do now I really love. I love using what I use, the Metropolis video. I think it's very fitting. And by the way, if anybody's asking, and my wife asked this, what's the deal with the guy behind you? The guy behind me is my metaphorical, in a cheese way, so, please don't strike me down, my Lord and Savior, metaphorical Lord and Savior, not an actual deity, but metaphorically my Lord and Savior, Donald Sutherland, of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers of Donald Sutherland. The IBS Sutherland. The IBS Sutherland is my Lord and Master, especially with it. Now, you know what? Not Lord and Savior, Lord and Master. That's better because he doesn't really save me. I'm not there to be saved when it comes to this type of master. He's not there to save me. He's there to I guess, assure my absorption into the whole. And that's what he is. At the end of Invasion Body Snatchers, he's the warrior throughout, man. He's kicking butt. He's reliable. He's determined. He's in the fight. And the lady gets to Washington D.C. and she finally meets the one friendly face left in the world, and he turns around and he goes. So that's what the theme of the show is, because the whole world is turning into that guy, the Karening of the universe. He is the original Karen, the greatest Karen of all time, and my Lord and Master, as I seek to embrace the reality of power in a way that I will reflect the very narrow moral constructs of the orthodox power that is, so that I can save my life and live the pitiful, diminished life that they offer me. And with that, why don't we go on a break? We'll go on the intermission, and we'll talk about stuff later. We got a feature coming up. We got a news poem to end with. This is going to be a beautiful thing. You all, you're welcome.
Love overwhelmed me. Love overwhelmed me.
material you're about to be exposed to is foreign. The minds of individuals who are limited in their capacity to understand the actual reality of power around them, just as you and everyone else alive currently are. What you're about to hear are opinions, suppositions, like gospel, or scientific proofs, not infallible certainties. Brace yourself for incoming opinions that could confirm or deny your proper right to view of the reality of power. Brace yourself for fallible material, fallible opinions, and values reflected, but nonetheless variably firmly held. We do not apologize to anyone, but we do not apologize for daring to express our views and questions about what we believe is and what we hope to see. We will keep talking so long as we are able.
And now, Frico attempts to talk about the news without freaking out.
It's the plan, ladies and gentlemen, and we are 14. That says 14 days. I just realized that is not right. That should not say days. How long has that said days? This is a failure to communicate. This is when the brain fails to communicate with the brain. I need my keyboard. Ladies and gentlemen, I need my wireless keyboard. Which, by the way, I need to get a new one because this one has taken it to the face repeatedly every day for the past, 4 years, I think I've had this thing. So it's probably due for replacement. We're going to say shows, because that's what it should say. 14 shows. Ladies and gentlemen, 14 shows in a row. And we are working on number 15 as we close in on the record of 21. And I want to say, yesterday I got like 3,000 emails from people complaining about that last segment. That said that, not the last segment, it was the Dialectical from yesterday, saying that no, you have to count that as a freak out. Dude, that was not a freak out. The whole thing about the cops is that's not a freak out. I kept my cool, I kept my calm, I kept fully aware that I wanted to make sure that I gave a balanced perspective, that I didn't give voice to I'm gonna say to violence in general. I'm very, especially in this day and age, especially given my underlying assumption that the violent response to tyranny today will do nothing but perpetuate, probably even worse tyranny. So I'm what I consider a freak out is when I act outside of essentially. When I know that I act outside of the intentions of this show, when I allow myself to demonize others in an over the top way without providing any kind of counter to, because some things I say in and of themselves, you can't help but say something, no matter, even if somebody deserves it. If you say something negative about someone or some group of people, even if there's truth to what you say, there's a level of demonization that goes on. So in general, my awareness of that means that I try to offer a balanced counter to check that, to not end up broad stroking or existentially defining in a very negative way individuals that would allow you to subhumanize them and make you assume that you have some God or rational given right to coercively act, to not assume consensuality with an individual. So I did not do that. So I stand by. It wasn't 3,000 emails. It was just one person. But the 3,000 emails became one person. Or one person became 3,000 emails because hyperbole, it really tells a much better story than facts. So we're just going to go with the hyperbole version, which is 3,000 emails instead of just one person. All right. And with that in mind, let's get ready for the next segment, which is, well, it's our talk feature. Wow, I just realized. Look at that. That's beautiful. If you're looking at the video here, I have the GDPR, or the EU flag behind me. It's a GDPR thing, and it kind of makes it look like I have like a crown of stars, 5 stars. A crown of 5 stars. Hold on. I paused that long enough so you guys can get a screenshot of that and turn that into a meme. I think that's very memeable. That thing could say all kinds of things. I'm lobbying for me becoming a meme. That's it. That's how pitiful it is. Listen, man, that's good marketing. It's good marketing, man. It's good if you're going to become the meme. I think that I should become the guy that replaces, the white beard guy that... He's always got a cup of coffee, or he's at a computer, or whatever. I want to replace that guy. I am that guy. I'm better than that guy because I'm me. That's it. I mean, don't get me wrong. He should feel the same way about himself, but that's irrelevant. Let's just focus on I am better than that guy. We're just going to leave it at that. We don't need the qualifiers that diminish the impact. We don't want that. Hyperbole is way better than facts, just so you know. With that in mind, let's get to our talk feature. In 3, 2, 1. This is our talk feature for today. For Frico Talks and News on Thursday, May 28th, 2020. I am Frico with Frico.com. The title of this talk feature is Breaking the Law Costs the EU Too Much to Enforce. GDPR reality takes hold. Now, I really have to watch this. This is a feature. I'm going to let you guys know, kind of check me here. This is a feature. That means that I should limit this to no more than 20 minutes. This feature can go up to 20 minutes, but ideally I still want it to 15. So if this video goes over 20 minutes in advance, let me just say that Frico will suffer a consequence. I can't tell you what that is because that's between Frico and the people that control him. In the legal theory of positivism, according to Empress Google, let me highlight this. Highlight this as I read this. All right, come on. Cooperate with me. My cursor was cursing at me, metaphorically, of course. Laws are to be understood as social rules, valid because they are enacted by authority or derive logically from existing decisions, and that ideal or moral considerations, e.g. that a rule is unjust, should not limit the scope or operation of the law. Now, to put it more bluntly, what positivism really comes to is laws are just if they are followed and or enforced. That's it. That's positive. You don't have to have all of these battles about what... You don't have to have constitutional authority. You have to have legal authority. This is... Yeah, I'll just say that. You just have to have legal authority. And the legal authority is the proof of the law, is the fruit of the law. It's followed and it's enforced. That's the fruit of the law. And if that happens, then there's your constitutional validation. To put it more bluntly, laws... Okay, I already read that. In the case of the further IP and patenting of human thought at the level of website link copyright licensing for news articles, that is the fundamental underlying revenue creating power of the GDPR, generating these fees for using news links. The dream of control has not matched the reality of enforcement, as the EU finds itself once again at odds with the reality of power. They're about ready to conflict with their own underlying assumptions, and I can assure you that that is their underlying assumption. I won't say that these people are positivists in the strictest sense of the term, but that is fundamentally how most government systems have de facto operated. All the other stuff, all of the moral constructs notwithstanding, that's really always ultimately the underlying reality of power for governments. Their ability to have their ability to thrive, and by thrive I mean produce what needs to be produced so that the Citadelians have at the end of the day, the force power to hold on to their Citadelian status. These folks, their they're not all that interested in the democratization of thought. So these particular citadelians have found this particular tool to utilize to copyright news links, to come up with a system that gives government suddenly the power to define what news is, as in who gets to say that they're the news. Right from the start, in order to protect the rights of the creators, you fundamentally empower the state to control the signal. I mean, that's all you know. So these folks, their underlying motivation for writing laws is if they can get away with it. That's positivism. Can you get away with it? That's underlying. That's in that sense, they're positivists. And in this sense, possibly. Maybe. They bit off more than they can chew this time. So this is from EURACTIV.com. Enforcement of EU data privacy rules is being stifled by a lack of resources across national authorities, according to a new study published today, 25 May, on the second anniversary of the EU's landmark General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. Yes, I'll make an exception in this case with I repeated the anagrammaticals and the long-windeds in the same sentence. I don't usually ever do that, but I don't ever say ever, except maybe I don't. Never mind. The report published by the advocacy group Access Now finds that due to a significant disparity in the funding of national data protection authorities, larger firms could try and use their economic wherewithal to potentially circumvent privacy provisions laid out in the GDPR. Companies could leverage DPA's lack of resources, using it to get around the application of the GDPR, or at least significantly delay its effect, the document states, referring to a recent claim by the Irish Data Protection Commission that procedural queries have been delaying decisions on first lines. Moreover, the number of employees working in data protection authorities across the EU has barely increased from 2019. They just, you don't, politicians, they consider very little the administrative cost of their fantasies. It's why you could literally have governors, grown adult human beings, that have gone to Ivy League colleges. Most of them are lawyers, so they've passed their bars. You got to have some level of intellectual capacity to go through that stuff, unless you didn't. Maybe some of them didn't, but I think most of them legitimately have, at least on that. These are legitimate accomplishments to be respected. I don't want to undermine people that go through these, but it should be, ideally, whatever process individuals go through, especially if that process is the dominant process that seems to produce your leaders. If it doesn't produce at the end mature adults, then you've got a real problem. And that's the problem we have here. Real adults understand that there is always a gulf between how they wish the world was and how the world can realistically be. Adults understand that when they do things, they should consider the consequences on other individuals. You especially want this in your leaders that control the forced monopolies of the land, that are the ultimate purveyors of who gets to kill who, justifiably, so to speak. You want these people to be adults. But what we've seen from governors, I could speak about Governor Tom Wolf, he's in my state, Pennsylvania. What we see from these governors are complete lack of disregard for the practical reality of power. The positivism, they're not even considering this anymore. they're not even considering whether they can get away with it or not. They've just totally left reality altogether. And they've enabled them somehow to construct in their minds a belief that they can act with impunity because quote-unquote emergency. And that only works for so long, and only works so long as there is at least some data to justify even the actions that you've already made that have hurt so many lives. The actions that you've made that have put police in it just destroyed any reputation police have in America. This shutdown has pretty much destroyed it. Who are going to trust the police after these lockdowns? And you can blame the governors because they didn't respect the basic limitations that even Citadelians largely put on themselves. And I can tell you, for the most part, Citadelians are not idiots as far as understanding the reality of power. Not that all of them, some of them are idiots, but most of them are pretty pragmatic in their ability to assess realities of power. And I can almost assure you that I bet you there's a fair number of Citadelians that are looking at these governors and like, okay, dudes, you're kind of hurting the team now at this point. You're fundamentally undermining your legitimacy, even at Citadelian status, because you're not even respecting even remotely the consideration that you can't imagine that creating a law that demands that businesses stay shut could ever be enforced realistically if human beings decide. The only reason that you didn't have massive amount of businesses open was because that, for the most part, people didn't want to, legitimately. And so, in the beginning, maybe you couldn't even really enforce it from the beginning. But in the beginning, at least you could target a couple show ponies that you could drop the hammer on repeatedly, make an example of a few. That's the goal. Just, you can't go after everyone. You feel like you could chill everyone with a little terroristic assaults on a select few. And no human adult with a basic understanding of the reality of power would ever have made the decisions that these governors made. That the ones that just knee-jerk made these mass declarations suddenly prohibiting fundamentally human interaction. No consideration of the reality of power that they have to enforce it. And that's what you have here. And now this only touches on one aspect of the GDPR, and it's interesting. It's this group Access now, what they're focusing on. They're focusing on their privacy concerns, how these websites use their private information. But the fundamental power of the GDPR has nothing to do with that. That's a real power it has created for itself, but the revenue making power is in the news links, in the fees that people have to pay to be able to talk about other news, and the state's power now to define what news is. Because how can you even make a claim as a news entity if you're not recognized as a news entity? And who's going to do that? Well, of course, state defines it. That's what that's ultimately about. And the revenue is just designed to fund all of the state police that they get to hire, the new cops that they get to hire. And they don't even get to call them cops, so they don't even have to, if you put a word cop on people in almost any nation, there are degrees of quote-unquote rights that human beings assume they have, but that doesn't happen when your quote-unquote cops are disguised as corporate faceless entities. It's much better that way. Then people can't even clean, even in America, Republicans, conservatives, over and over again, when it comes to talking about the open and aggressive violation of Americans' bills of rights by corporations, their response is, but it's the corporations, so somehow that makes it right. Either you believe in the principles of bills of rights as a governing model for human interaction, or you don't. If you believe that bills of rights should only apply to government and how it interacts with humans, then I don't care what legally the precedent is. the precedent for Americans needs to be, the Bills of Rights needs to apply to the totality of our lives, and not with puritanical certainty, but with general striving towards. I'm not calling for rigid enforcement of Bill of Rights standards in humans' lives and canceling people who no, you're just going to replace it. It'll be a new form of SJW authoritarianism. It'll use the Bill of Rights as a vehicle of power that'll be perverted into authoritarian ends, and that is possible. So I would always stress it's a general guide for interaction, not a religious puritanical tool. If it ever becomes that, it's not going to be a Bill of Rights outcome in the end. Companies could leverage DPA's lack of resources using it to get... Well, I already read all this. Anyway, I think that's all I got to say about this. So I'm going to end it here. That is the end of this feature, the focus feature for Frico Talks and News. Coming up next is the last feature for today's Frico Talks and News, and that's a news poem, and our news poem of the day is The Squid Skill Dialectical in the Flux of Genetic Exchange. Oh, man, I never did switch over the scenes for this one. Darn it, darn it, darn it. I'm going to get used to this, folks. If you fail enough times and you're disappointed in your failure, that is a powerful heuristic institutional tool. My body is already working towards a habit of scene change. I can assure you, Monday is coming. The greatness of the PG experience is coming as well. So stay tuned. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. If you're watching on the YouTube channel in the excerpt version of this, or if you're watching on the live stream, stay tuned, because Monday is coming. June 1st, the greatest podcasting day in the history of the universe that only a select few will know about. Woo! Get ready for the poem here. News poem. Well, I guess you could say technically, see, I didn't stop recording just so that I could have on the recording all of the scenes, all the 30 scenes, even though they're, one after the other. Bravo, bravo, bravo. That's how you do it. That's how you make sure that you can say, you know what, for every single scene, I can say this much, a big improvement. For every single excerpt, I changed all the scenes. Now, maybe for half of them, I changed all the scenes at the very end, but that is irrelevant. I'm going to leave that part out because, again, facts, not as effective as hyperbole. Just not. See how that is? See how that is? See? That's the lesson for the show, by the way. Don't live by facts. Facts will put you in second, third, fourth, fifth place. You got to compete with people who will lie and be believed. It's just business. It's just business. All right, let's get ready for the last segment here. All right, let's do this in 3, 2, 1. This is a news poem for Frico Talks the News for Thursday, May 28th, 2020. My name is Frico with Frico.com, and our news poem today is The Squid Skill Dialectical in the Flux of Genetic Exchange. This is an excerpt from SciTechDaily.com. News first, poem follows. They can massively edit their own genetics, revealing yet another superpower in the skillful squid. Scientists have discovered that squid massively edit their own genetic instructions, not only within the nucleus of their neurons, but also within the axon. And the axon, that's the... Well, of course, everybody knows. It's the long, slender neural projection that transmits electrical impulses to other neurons. Duh. This is the first time that edits to genetic information have been observed outside of the nucleus of an animal cell. The study, led by Isabel C. Vallecillo Viejo and Joshua Rosenthal at the Marine Biological Laboratory, not doing that, Woods Hole, is published this week in Nucleic Acids Research. Honey, I've done this bit before, but it bears repeating. Honey, Good news! I got a job. Oh, you did? I'm the editor of a magazine. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's wonderful. I can't wait to share this with all my friends. What's the name of the magazine? Nucleic Acids Research. Oh, so we're going to be homeless. Sorry. Just not busting on you. Just... Damn. That's a specialty. I mean, I think I struggle for an audience. Oh, wow. Imagine if I did a show. This is the show. Welcome to the Daily Nucleic Acids Research Show. The discovery provides another jolt to the central dogma of molecular biology, which states that genetic information is passed faithfully from DNA to messenger RNA to the synthesis of proteins. In 2015, Rosenthal and colleagues discovered that squid, quote, edit, unquote, their messenger RNA instructions to an extraordinary degree. Orders of magnitude more than humans do, allowing them to fine-tune the type of proteins that will be produced in the nervous system. Dude. Come on, man. Come on. Hooba wooba waba. This is some voodoo stuff, man. This is some righteous voodoo stuff. But we thought all the RNA editing happened in the molecule, in the nucleus, and then the modified messenger RNAs are exported out to the cell, says Rosenthal. He's the senior author on the study. Okay, senior author Rosenthal. Senior author Rosenthal. Now we are showing that squid can modify the RNAs out of the periphery of the cell. That means theoretically they can modify protein functions to meet the localized demands of the cell. Dang. To meet the localized, dang. You can, I mean, this is, what we're finding more and more in general is the overall flexibility of evolution. The possibility for there to be a multiplicity of rapid changes in organisms to manners and degrees to which we didn't expect. And also, like the story that I did yesterday with the Peruvian chickens that seem to be able to quickly revert their biological traits in a quick order within a generation back to the way it was when they're returned back to their original homelands. It's an evidence. I wouldn't say definitive, but it's strong evidence to show the biological transfer of memory within genes. Or if you will, I would argue that the genes keep the patterns of the past in reserve in case the organism not in case the genes keep the memory that this just happens. This is just, and maybe it happens probably because the reality of power of conditions were such that organisms that had that trait within their cells were more adaptive. They could go forward or back. That's the idea, I think, in general, that the organism that could go forward or back, and that it enables you to do that in essence. But it opens up all kinds of doors as far as what you might be able to do going forward with that type of knowledge. If you could use that knowledge, if you could duplicate it, if you could engineer memory and build it into organisms to create what you want to create, even including memories. Well, anyway, let's get to the poem part of this. That's the news part. Here comes the poem part. The squid skill dialectical in the flux of genetic exchange. Squid skill, full axis control. Dialectical genetics in the inky exchange. The force, proteins, spelled into the limbs, the particular coils, the mangles of beak, set to dismember the life's competitive blood. And then the sea settles around the internal sense of it, a butterfly metaphorical fluttering through the space between the competing concerns of the factorial proteins within, uttering new design points towards the outer edge where Fischio red serpentine floats into the perfect snare. The digital flow of data in exchange beyond the quantum across the spheres of the eye in simultaneity become I. Beak which ensnares Fischio red serpentine. In. Float. Skillful. Squids. And that's it. That's the end of the news poem. And I thank you very much for listening to the news poem. And I hope you think about the whole notion of how it is that we can transfer biological, what we would refer to, the word itself has a value connotation. Atavism, the tendency to develop traits from the past. Usually, often, outside of biology, it refers to people who act in ways that reflect what we refer to as cruder times. Atavistic natures, caveman mentality. Acting like a caveman, that's atavistic. But in biology, it's the tendency on occasion for organisms to revitalize old traits, to go backwards, if you will. And to see that capacity to do this, it exists. Now, what I think we're also going to find, and I remember, and I read this book so long ago, it was by Arthur Kessler, and I think it was called Ghost in the Machine. And it was a book that postulated that the problem with evolution, doesn't appreciate the possibility that the potential patterns are inherent in cells right from the start, that the human pattern was there from the start. All of the patterns were there. All the potential patterns were there. The power of the biology is its initial capacity to unfold in different directions depending upon the circumstances. And I think that book and that type of thought is getting a lot more scientific evidence to back it up. I just wanted to add that at the very end because I think it's worth note. I know this is a news poem and I don't usually, but I don't operate on the nevers. I won't say I will never say never, but probably I won't. It's likely. It's highly likely. And I've proven it here because I've done what I don't usually do in a news poem. But I think in this case I feel good about that decision. I feel very good about that decision. But now all things must end, including this news poem. We'll see you tomorrow for the first segment of the show, which will be posted sometime after the show ends, which is usually anywhere between 9:30 and 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's about ready to end now, and it's 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday, May 28th, as I record this and live stream it right now. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. So I thank you very much for joining the show, and I think that this time I remembered I'm going to do this. Going to do something here. Alright? Alright, I'm going to change this to 15. And I got to tell you, honestly, I thought today would not be too much of a challenge. And it wasn't. And I think that, judging from what I've seen for tomorrow's show, I haven't fully settled on what tomorrow's show is going to be, but largely I have. I would say probably going to get through tomorrow pretty easily as well. Probably next Monday as well. So I think that I don't want to be cocky here, because that's when bad things happen, but I'm feeling like now I'm at 15. That means tomorrow 16, and on Monday it'll be 17. I think I have a pretty fairly good chance of getting to 17. We'll see. I haven't even thought about Tuesday's show yet. So, we'll see. So with that, I'm going to head on out to the sunset and prepare these excerpts for posting on. Right now, I'm just using YouTube and BitChute. But I'm open to suggestions as far as where else could I possibly post these videos where I might find an audience that would like the kind of stuff I'm putting out here, which is this kind of stuff is not what a lot of people want to see. So, I mean, at least my audience isn't that nucleic, neuronic, whatever thing. It's not that narrow. I'm huge. I have a huge upside compared to that, but not the money. They have the money. They don't need the audience. They got the money, because people will pay primo for that. So the power is in their money, not their numbers. And with that, I'm going to end this show. We'll see you guys tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm really loving doing it at this time. And so far, I think I have reason to believe that it's doing, at the very least, doing a little bit better. So I have enough, at least, to justify that I'm not hurting myself by doing it at this time, I think. Good night, everybody. Or good morning and good day.
Thank you for engaging with this material presented. As usual, remember your views, your suppositions do not make you subhuman, nor do they permit you to subhumanize others. No humans were harmed in the making of the show, and we extend no wish of harm in anyone who hasn't directly harmed or threatened to harm others first, no matter how reprehensible we find your views.
We will see you in the next Frico Talks, where Frico attempts to talk about news without freaking out.
It's